It is so good to see all of you in the house of the Lord tonight. I know with all the new COVID restrictions and things that are taking place constantly, I know we're in and out, and so it's good to see you and to be able to worship and study together. For those of you that will be online with us watching this Thursday night, welcome, and we hope that you gain a lot of insight about where we are as this summer we are walking through, and let me just emphasize that if you have a specific topic, if you have a specific issue you would like to talk about, Pastor, I'd like to talk about this. I know the biggest one that I've been dealing with, and one that was brought right off the top, was tell me about the end times, as far as tell me about how it's supposed to be. And of course, even tonight, we will be answering and working from the question of what's going on, what's happening with people. What is it that's taking place? Why do we see people, just the way people act now and the way people respond and do? It's I guess you say the world is going crazy, it seems like. And so we want to work with that tonight. But please, if there's issues or things that are going on, or I would love for you to, Pastor, deal with this, please let me know. We want to touch on every topic that we possibly can, because as the time is drawing closer and closer, and as we feel the pressure of this world and all that's taking place in it, people's 401ks don't seem to matter as much anymore. And all the stuff that seemed like it really mattered a lot in 2019, it's not exactly the same anymore. And we're seeing the pressure of this world as pestilence and things we talked about a few weeks ago, as pestilence and things are going to continue. To swine flu, they say, is going now, the thing that's coming, and so it's not going to go back in the way that we would like it to. It's not going to go back to where we're as naive about all the things that could happen. That part is shattered. The naive mind said that, well, there's no way they would ever shut a country down. Oh yeah. There's no way they would, that policemen or other people would have. Oh yeah. We live in that world today. And it's going to be a fight. I was telling pastors the other day that even opening church services and even dealing with that, you're going to have to fight for just the fact of having church, or just the fact of doing what you normally do. All right. So tonight, what I want to deal with is, as we said, the thought or the topic of what's going on with people. What is it? How did we get here? Not so much with the virus, not so much with all the stuff that has gone on, but how did we get here as people? How did we get to a place to where our society, our culture, how did we arrive at this place where there seems to be so much hopelessness, so much anger, so much bitterness, you name it, you name the word and it's there. And it seems like there's people that love to just keep egging it on and just keep, poking it with a stick to see if they can make it go even worse. How did we get to where we're this society? Well, as you turn your Bibles to 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, that's where we will settle down. But let me walk us through history a little bit and make us realize that the first institution that God ever created was family. That was the first institution that God did not, in the Garden of Eden, build a tabernacle. He did not build a church. He did not tell Adam, you know what, you need to come and sing praises every Sunday the first thing that He created was a family. And from that institution, everything else derives. The enemy knows this. Churches are just buildings. They are filled with families. That's all they are. And whatever someone has learned or has received for 6+ days is what they're going to worship for 2 hours. And many times we fail to see it that way. We have spent 6 days, hundreds of hours, 100+ hours in this world, in our situation, in our house, watching our TV programs, doing our normal thing. And then for 2 hours we come out and we try to convince ourselves now we need to worship Before we go back into the car and definitely turn our music right back on the stuff that was, let's be honest, you weren't listening to K-Love. You were listening to something else. A lot of people are. And so for those of us that are, awesome. And those of it that are making our homes that's what it was meant to be. Because understand now, the home was the first thing God originally built. In fact, He said, for this cause, a man shall leave his mother and father. That's the reason you leave home. That's the reason you finally walk away from your family structure. And to think of how different we are today from the time a child's 18. If they hadn't already got enough issues, now we send them off to be with 10,000 more teenagers just as messed up and to spend 4 years trying to figure out life there. Can you imagine and see all the problems that we've added into our lives? Nothing wrong with college, nothing wrong, but everything that we're doing is so much against what God said is the way it should be. That a young woman, a young man, they stay with their family, they stay with their home, they stay in their group that's teaching them and growing them and helping them become the men and women of God they're supposed to be. And then when they find another person who is a man or woman of God, then it's okay then to leave and to that moment to find somebody to live with for the rest of your life. I understand we have to go to college. I understand. But keeping the mindset that this isn't where I want to be. This isn't where I want to stay. And so God created this in the beginning in Genesis, and He said, this is good. This is the way it should be. Now from that, all through history, we have constantly been changing, creating cities, creating everything we can to divide that, push that. In America, as we get to America's age, and I'm not going to go back through all of history, but just starting in America, when you first go back and you look at where we began, the mother, the father, all was on the farm. Everybody grew up on the farm. The father was there. The mother was there. Anybody watch Little House on the Prairie? That was life. I mean, Dad got up. He was just 100 yards down the road there if there was a problem. He came in for lunch. They all ate or he had it right. That was life. In the early 1900s, I know that seems like a million miles away, but listen, a little over 100 years ago, that was life. Less than 100 years ago, I remember my dad in the 40s and 50s saying, Tim, I remember hitching up the wagon to go to church. My dad lived in the Delta, picked cotton. No combines, he picked cotton. That's what from the moment he could pull a sack. That's what he did. And I'm thinking, that's only 70 years ago. That's not, but 100 years ago, that was life. And then we hit the Industrial Revolution. We hit the first revolution that hit America. Ford and steel, all the different companies that started to rise. And oil and gas and everything else. And nothing wrong with it. The fact was, but here was what happened. For the first time, the family was fractured. The husband left the home. No more on the farm. He had a job. He left the wife, the children. He would go for 8 to 10 hours a day. And he would come back at the end of the day tired, spend a few hours, go to sleep. Some of you remember your life growing up in a family where, that was life. Dad went to work. We see him in the afternoon. Yeah, we had vacations. Isn't it great that they gave you a whole week or two every year just to spend with each other? Ain't that so nice of that company? We're even going to pay you to spend 1 week with your family, but then you hurry up and get back. And that became life. In those TV shows, we Leave It to Beaver, Father Knows Best, the Dick Van Dyke, any of those shows in that era, you would see the dad would dress up in a suit and walk out in the morning and he's headed out and mom is sitting there with her little apron on and she's taking care of the kids and she's having to solve Wally's issues and everybody else, Beeve's issues and everybody else's issues, and that was life. And America watched it and said, that's it. That's what we want. The Industrial Revolution lasted until the 1940s. By the 1940s, the next issue began to happen. The sexual revolution. By the 1940s, we had World War I, World War II had taken place. What had happened was now the men didn't just go to work. Now they were gone. And that's where you see the picture of the woman is standing there like this, and because why? Because women were working in the factories. Women were building the cars, and women were doing the machinery, because they were the ones left behind doing work. And for the first time, they realized, hey, we don't have to stay in the house. And through the 40s, the 50s, you started having the malt shops in the 50s, and now we're all just going to and by the 60s, you've got all of the sexual revolution has run its full course. You've got Woodstock, you've got all the different things that are fixing to explode. You got women that burn their bras and say, no more, we're through, free love, and we're out of here. So what happened? Now a whole new revolution took place. What we call the next generation was the latchkey kid generation. Because now notice mom has a job and dad has a job. That's normal now. Mom works, dad works. You can't make a living unless both people work. You can't survive unless both have an income, because you just can't live off one income. You can't have 2 cars, big house, land, everything unless everybody's working. Because taxes and everything else. So what happened was we created a whole new genre. Do you remember like the country store? I live in Good Hope out in Lake. And so that is a store that's been there for years and years and years. And it's hard to imagine that used to be a grocery store. How could that little thing be a grocery store? I mean, you couldn't put enough stuff in there you need Walmart. That's you gotta have, the Kroger or something where you just walk in, it's like, oh. What color grape do you want? So all of a sudden, after the 1960s, wives went to work, husbands went to work. We created a thing called Latchkey Kid. I grew up working during that season, so I saw the expansion. Some of the first jobs I had was Sack and Save, and people who were just starting to build the mega markets and things like that. And it was crazy to me to think, Lord, we're creating a whole aisle of nothing but cereal. Who can eat this much cereal? We have microwave pizzas. You don't even have time to cook a pizza no more. It's just microwave it. In fact, we'll make it little squares and turn it into pizza bites. You don't even have to have a whole pizza anymore. Why? What was the purpose? Well, because Latchkey Kids. Latchkey Kids just gives the reference from this, is that by this time at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, kids get off their bus. Somewhere around the house, the key is hid. They may have it on a chain around their neck or have it in their book bag or whatever they might, but they let themselves in the door. They walk in. They have to take care of themselves till mom and dad get home. Some of you grew up as a latchkey kid. You learned how to eat Pop-Tarts. You learned how to use the microwave. You learned how to survive. You could make milk and cereal. And guess what? Cartoons wasn't just on Saturday mornings anymore. Every 3 o'clock, every afternoon till 5 or 6 o'clock till the news came on. Now you have cartoon time and I used to think, man, I used to think they were so spoiled. I had to wait till Saturday morning, get up at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning, get in front of the TV, and until my dad told me to turn that thing off and get outside, I was there watching Bugs Bunny, and I was watching all the classics. Oh, but no. We got to have a babysitter. And that's when MTV, all the other shows started coming along, because that's when, and over time, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, all the different channels. Why? Because now those kids are there and they need something to do. That's the time about when Atari came out. Anybody remember Pong and all the Pong? And boy, you just turn that thing, and boing, boing. And then by the time I graduated high school, by the time I was, man, you had Tecmo Bowl. We thought that was the greatest thing in the world, Tecmo. It actually looked like real people moving around. And it was like, oh my goodness, they actually had legs. Now, Lord, I can't even describe what they hold and use and the headsets and virtual, but it's still the same thing. The fact is what happened was now from latchkey kids, we have this generation that we have that have learned their lives, their morals, their identity from a TV program, from a video game, from a few hours that they spend with their parents, but hours they spend at school. Where do they learn about sex? At school. Where do they learn about life? At school. How do they learn to deal with their issues? And so we have a generation now, what we're watching on TV, these 30s and 40-year-olds, and we're seeing a generation that, and you say, Pastor, it ain't that. No, do you understand that if you have a mom and dad, you will be in the minority now if you go to school? Most people are raised by either a single parent or a split home or by grandma or by... That's the norm. Less than 100 years from Little House on the Prairie, the family has gone through this convulsion to get to here. And we called it progress. And look how proud we are of ourselves. I'm not trying to depress you. I'm trying to answer your question. How did we get here? We're not even going to add on top of that what we did to the family through same-sex marriage and basically redefining what a family actually was, that a family can be anything that lives together now. Far away from Genesis that said it'll be a man and a woman. And for this cause, that's why you separate and that's why you come together, because that's the healthy answer. We've come a long way. We've changed and made a lot of laws. And we're here. I say that because Paul said when he was writing to Timothy, he said Timothy was pastoring in a place called Ephesus, which was a real rough place to begin with. And in that, he tells Timothy, he said, Timothy, in the last days, it's going to get bad. In fact, if man pushes and keeps pushing, there is very little end but one end. And that's what God calls revelations. We studied that. But just to tell you where man is, and just to show you where we are in our society and our lives, not to scare you, not to try to, but just to give you a reality that this is who we are. This is why we're scared to stop at a gas station at night. This is why we're fearful when somebody walks up next to us because we don't know what they want. That's why we're scared to let our kids play in the yard. I remember playing in ditches in the front yard when I was growing up, but no more. No, you stay close to the house. You don't leave because there's crazy people out there. And they're not lying. There are. There are people that want to hurt you just to be hurting you. And then to top it all off, we decided to come up with every type of crime show that comes up with every imaginative way to hurt people. Boy, that does people really good who are already kind of weird in the head. Let's just come up with every NCIS we possibly can, every way somebody can get murdered, every way somebody can get killed, every way. Let them watch that for 10 more years and, boy, we'll be much better. No. In 2 Timothy 3, 1 through 7, here is what he says. But know this. Timothy, I'm warning you. I'm trying to explain something to you. Know this, that in the last days, perilous times will come. I would love to tell it to you in any other way. I would love to say it in any other direction, but I'm trying to tell you that it's very important right now of spending time teaching your family. It's very important right now praying with one another. It's very important right now because what the world that they live in and our families live in and my kids live in and your kids live in is a perilous world. But it's the world we live in. With all the advertisement, with all the don't do it, with all the... Doesn't matter. We live in a world, it says, for men will be, Timothy, first off, understand
Don't be ignorant. Don't be caught off guard. Don't be unaware, because these times are perilous. Go with me in your Bibles to Matthew 24 and 22. 24 and 22. Matthew 24, 22. And I didn't give them these scriptures, so we're kind of going to move slow tonight. Is that all right? We'll go back to Timothy, I promise. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, that's you, for all of us that love the Lord and are waiting for His coming, He said, unless I shorten the days, you would not be able to handle the pressure and the anxiety and everything that's fixing to come on this world. I know people say, well, I'll just wait till after the rapture and then I'll get it. No. If the Spirit of God is nudging and living in you now, and it is a fight, let me explain to you that when He is gone, when the horn is sounded and He is raptured up those that believe and are gone, you think the Spirit is heavy and bad now. What it describes in Revelations will be normal. People being killed and beheaded, beaten to death, giving their life for just saying that I believe. So perilous times will come, grave or hazardous, dangerous, threatening. A great possibility of hurt. Go with me to Matthew 24 and 10. Let me show it to you there. Jesus is trying desperately when He's speaking to give it to them and try to get them to understand it. And then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate. Many will be, think about your news, offended. Many will betray and will hate. Not dislike. Not just disagree. But will hate one another. Welcome to our world. Go back with me to Timothy. And let's look at this mindset of the people that we have to be careful that we don't become like. While we're engulfed in Facebook, while we're engulfed in the news, while we have to be careful we're not screaming at the TV, while we have to put guards on what comes through their channels, let me just show you what will continue to rise and what humanity will be. Now, let me give you this disclaimer. While all this is going on, there will be people that will ring the bell and they will decide, I'm giving my life to God and I want to win as many to God as possible. You're not going to read that in many papers. You're not going to hear that in the news. They're not going to be publicizing. I guarantee you the news is not going to come down here and say, hey, tell us about this exceptional growth that you're having in church. Right? They're not going to do that. But it will be happening. There will be some great things that will be taking place. There will be some great miracles that will be happening. There will be lives that will be saved. It is yes, this great revival that will take place, but it's going to be different than the revival the world and the church has always thought about. Well, we're going to have this great revival you may have this great revival with a mask on sitting at your house, praying with your kid who has needed the Lord and he's finally coming to grips. It may not look like what we thought great revival is going to look like. It will be great revivals. There will be great moves of God. But at the same time, it's going to be perilous times. At the same time, it's going to be dangerous in this world. At the same time, the world is aching and creaking and slowly moving toward its end. For notice what it says. For men, number one, will be lovers of themselves. They will be lovers of themselves. In other words, I deserve more. I deserve better. You ever hear that phrase from anybody? I deserve more than that. I deserve better than that. That's what lovers of self, it means. That's the phrase that comes out when someone is... We think of it as lovers of all, like they're going to like that. No. It's just like when you say something, I deserve to be treated. Hey, give me my respect. Forget what I act like. Forget that I don't deserve it. Give it to me anyway. Why? Because I already have decided I'm worthy. I've already decided that I'm going to take it. I've already decided that I'm not getting enough. I deserve more. I want it now. I'm addicted to myself and allergic to God. Lovers of their own selves. I hear Christians so absorbed in life that their goal is to be happy. It even comes across from our preaching. It's like, hey, we want you happy. We want you. Well, that's not the goal. There are times we are, but lovers of self, this is the mindset that they have. If we can read the signs in the last days, we will see people so busy in sports, in computers, in games, it will turn into a dog-eat-dog world. That's what we're seeing. Whatever's good for me. That's why the chaos has happened right now so much since they shut everything down. We never expected it when we shut everything down that this egotistical world would say, I got to have more. I can't live with this. So people that, even though there's a coronavirus, 10,000 of them decide to go marching. Why? Because I'd rather die than to live without more. I deserve more. The second thing that you find out about them is that they become very covetous. They're lovers of money. That's kind of funny because money's the one thing that's going to go away. And it's so crazy. Well, how soon? Just think. We wear masks. We can't get 6 feet close to each other. How long do you think they're going to tell you you can pass a dollar bill to someone else? And you rub on it and sneezed on it and stuck it in your bra or whatever you done. And then all of a sudden you pull it out and like, here. How long do you think that's going to last before they say, whoa, we can't be touching. If Falsey come out today and said, look, touching money is the number one thing that's got, you don't think they would shut that down in a heartbeat? Come on, guys. That's why the Bible says in the last days they'll throw their money, they'll throw their gold, they'll throw their silver from the windows because it's useless. You won't be able to buy or sell unless the government gives you the right or gives you the ability. Banking will, you think of what's going to happen if we keep going the route we're going. How long do you think before houses collapse, rentals collapse, everything? You can't keep putting trillions of dollars of stimulus out there and eventually something doesn't crack. But we can just print more money. Yeah. Until one day somebody says, no. That's when it's going to be bad. You think it's bad now. You got fat people that's doing the protesting. You know, they just got through eating and they went protesting. That's one thing. But you start having people that don't get checks no more and they get out on the street, you're going to have some mad folks. They're coming for your refrigerator. Forget your TVs. They're coming for your fridge. You deep freeze. It's the world we live in. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just telling you the truth. You want to know where we are? Well, I'm telling you. In fact, Paul's telling you. In the last days, there will be covetous people. They desire money. They want more. And the funny thing is, while we're all of this, go to the next one. We are also boasters. You ever see them interview people in this time? Why are you doing this? I don't know. Yeah. What are you mad at? I don't know. I'm just mad. I just want to tear up Target. Get a TV and then burn it. Why you wanted to burn it? I don't know. Let's just burn that car. Proud boasters. That's not how it says. They're braggarts. To assertive demand, loud mouthed. Do you ever see the people who represent some of these people, how they'll even Biden and others now are starting to realize that when they'll come up and take the mic away from them and they'll tell them, if you don't let me talk, I'll shut this thing down. You don't hear them say that? They're loud. We used to call you just a loud mouth. You remember growing up, look, that's just a loud mouth right there. Oh no. Now, notice what else? Proud. ego, super ego, high self-opinion. My opinion is the only opinion that matters. I'm right, everybody else is wrong. And I know we don't have a lot of that in America, but you will start to see it. You will start to see it. So imagine trying to talk to someone of this nature who's boastful, proud. When you start to talk to them about God and you start to say, hey, man, you know what you're doing is not going to, you know it's not going to work. Listen to what the next one is. Blasphemers. So the moment you start to do that, they're going to shout you down and, oh, don't bring God into it. Don't talk about God. You watch some of the TV programs and different people that are on there. I know there was a guy on CNN. They had what he had said the other night about God and just incredible that we've reached such a part. And I thought, wow. Don't get me wrong. If there's a hurricane coming to New Orleans, we'll start praying again. Don't worry. Everybody will be telling everybody, let's pray. But we're blasphemers. We don't really love to pervert or to turn aside from the proper usage, to lead astray, to take profane, to abuse religion, to curse it, to swear it, to damn it, to use God's name in vain, to pollute, to be irreverent, to focus on carnal things, not eternal things, to be dirty, to be unclean, to be filthy. Just filthy. That becomes the norm. Not only are they blasphemers, but notice now we start to move into what I was talking about, how we got here. Notice the next quality. Disobedient to parents. Kill both parents. They on the average, about 5 parents are killed by their biological children a week in the U.S. now. Per week. You'd say, well, that happens up. No, it happens just right here in Pearl. Happened, one of the grandkids the other day went to both his grandparents' house, shot both of them, took what he could, and got their car. It happens all over. And it's not going to get better because they don't want to be told no, or that we're not right, or we're not, because Nickelodeon told me that I'm smarter than old people. And Disney has always told me that my parents are stupid. You ever watch the shows? The kids are the brilliant ones. The parents are the dumb ones. Watch that for 15 years and then try to say, do what I tell you. Well, you're an idiot. I'm smarter than you. Which moves us to number 9. Unholy. Unthankful and unholy. No respect for God. Wicked, evil, irreverent. Just basically loving the fact that now I brag on the fact that I don't do what God says. I've started preaching 30-something years ago. And I thought to myself, we a long ways. But in one generation, 30 years, I've watched it happen. And you've watched it happen. What we grew up with in the 70s and 80s and what we, laughed about in the 90s, the wild hair and the whatever was, now all of the theology has finally grown up inside the kids. And the cereal and the Pop-Tarts, all that time alone in their room, playing games, online, on their computers, on their phones. They're educated. Somewhat. Because here's the problem. The next thing that happens, family has a barrier. Family has a thing that prevents all of this from happening. It's built inside of it. you from the time you hold that baby the first time to the time you are there when they scratch their knee on a bike to the time you cook dinner for them and you sit there and you watch movies with them, and there's something built into the family. Notice, unthankful, unholy, unloving. Or, as it might say in yours, without natural affection. It's like a video game you are. You are not a reality. Nothing is really real. I was noticing the other night when they were, one group was in front of in Washington, and the National Guard is sitting there, and the police are up front, and they're trying to deter, and they've got rubber bullets, and it's all, and then you got this one group that's standing behind, and they've got M16s. And they don't have no rubber bullets. And it's like, in their minds, nobody's going to do anything. This is just a game. This is just a game. It's like a reporter that was going into the Seattle thing, and he got in there, and all of a sudden he got in trouble, and his first question was, "Where's the cops?" I'm thinking, this wasn't a game, dude. Did you not know you entered an area where you didn't want cops? It's funny, because we lose our natural affection. We live in a 3D world. Nothing is really real. It doesn't seem real. In fact, we almost have to do something. In fact, when they take kids that have shot people, or they take teenagers that hurt people, or watch a wrestling thing and hurt somebody, they'll ask them, "What were you?" "I just wanted to feel what it was like." Because I've watched it all my life, but I don't know what it feels like. That's why our all of that is out the roof. Why? Because I've watched it since I was 5, and I just want to know. I never thought I would hear somebody say, "I just want to have a baby because I want to have a friend." I'm like, there's a lot of ways to have a friend, sweetie, but that ain't the way to go. I know you've been watching, Pregnant and 16 on MTV, but it don't work like that. Without natural affection, to take the natural plan of God and modify it to your own liking. To take what God has called this and say, "No, I'm going to do it this way." Go with me in your Bibles to Romans 1 and 26, and let me show it to you. Romans 1 and 26. This is a real rough list, ain't it? I didn't write it. Y'all are like, "Boy, Pastor come up with all these crazy names." I didn't write any of this. This is the Apostle Paul telling you, and I think of all the years I've preached this and thought, well, I can, tell them, now I'm telling you it's going to be false. In the future, I don't have a future no more, guys. I'm just telling you it's here. This is our reality. This is what Romans 1 and 20. For this reason, God gave them over to vile passions. See, when you keep pushing against God and pushing against God and pushing against God and saying, "I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do what I want. God says, "Okay." And He doesn't do it because He doesn't love you. Remember what I said? He allows things in our lives because He cannot stop us in the fact that we have dominion. If we want to do something, God's not going to cripple you like you always say, "God, why didn't you stop me?" God's like, "That's not the way I work. While I was walking to the drug house, why didn't you just give me, break both of my legs?" No, He's not going to do it. He's going to let you walk right on in. But here's what He does. He says, "You keep pushing, you keep pushing, you keep pushing. I'll turn you over." In other words, God says, "I step back one step and I give you that space that you wanted. And I hope that you realize that you didn't really want it." That's what I hope. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use of what was against nature. That's where we're at. We don't even know what to do with our bodies. Shoot. We don't even know if our bodies is really the body we were supposed to have. forget not liking our bodies. We don't even know if we got the wrong one when we were born. You're a boy. I don't know. No, you're a boy. I don't feel like a boy. Well, believe me, when you go to the men's restroom, you'll figure it out. I don't care what Susie told you. You're a boy. And you think that we don't have to have that conversation. Yeah, we do. Yes, we do. Because God says, I had to step back. When we decided as a country, here's what we're going to do. Here's the way we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to. God says, okay. All right. Bruce and Caitlin, whatever you are, you have yourself a high time. See if that brings happiness to you. Look it up now. Bruce Jenner, he ain't the happiest man in the world. You know, they gave him awards for stepping out and being so. He's one of the most miserable people. Why? Because God didn't step back to make it easier. God stepped back saying, you said that would make you happy. Now look at what it gave you. Your family won't talk with you. Nobody, the same people that applauded you when you did it, they don't want you around now. Because all they used you for was to push a little harder against God. Once they were through with you, they were through with you. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions. Now, go back to Timothy with me. Let's go back to there. Let's move through this list. Unliving, unloving, unforgiving, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasures. Let's just break it down. So they're truce breakers. They're false accusers. You ever I have to be very careful now where I go. I have to be careful because you don't know if somebody will make up a lie just to somebody come back from high school when I was in high school and say, oh, here's what happened to me. Well, I hate to break it to y'all. I didn't even have a cell phone. I couldn't defend myself if somebody said that I hurt them. I got no way to defend. There was no cell phone or video. But see, we live in a world where people can do that and never even bat an eye now. Because of hatred and anger and everything else, they can just look and want to destroy your life and never even think twice about it. Don't care if it hurts you or not. They're false accusers, truce breakers. Incontent, out of control, driven by anger, drunken, drugs, sexual desires, no self-control. They're fierce, despisers of those that are good. Traitors, heady, high-minded, means elevated feelings, great opinion of self. Lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. In other words, they lust, their desire, their passion, it overrides everything. Joy and happiness is goals. That's their goal. I want to be happy. I want to have joy. That's why everybody does what they do today. That's why they feel like they're being robbed. That's why we have a whole generation of people. We have a whole culture of people. We have all that because I need to be happy, and you are supposed to make me happy. They have a form of godliness. Notice the next verse. They have a form of God. That's crazy. How can they have a form of godliness? Well, it's simple. Look at church in our modern time. It's more entertainment driven than it is anything else. It's not missional driven. It's not about winning the world or winning the lost. Is the temperature right in the room? Am I comfortable? Do I like what I'm... They're emotional, making outward pretenses to be so inclusive, everything goes. They deny, though, the power thereof. They don't want the power of what God's life really is, which is to change you. I guess the easiest way to describe this is simply this, is that if I were to ask you, are people naturally pretty good people or people naturally not good people? What do you think? Think people are naturally good or naturally bad? The reality is that we have both of it in us. Because we have a piece of God in us from the time we're born, innately we want to be good. But because we have a perversion about us in our nature, we go about it usually wrong. We see story after story in the Bible of people that want to do good, but do it all in the wrong way. And if you add to that a catastrophe or a hurt or anything that can really, then that makes it even more easy to go towards something bent wrong. So naturally, we have a tendency in us to want to do right. That's what the Apostle Paul said. He said, in me I find two laws. There is a law that says I want to do right. But how to accomplish it, I can't figure it out. I don't know how to make it happen because the harder I try, the worse I get. And everything I pick to try to fix it doesn't work. So welcome to our world. And imagine if I gave you hundreds of options. By the time you're 15 to 20 years old, I've given you hundreds of, you can use your body, you can drink this, take this, cut yourself, the list goes on and on. Imagine by the time you're 15 to 20 years old, I've given you all these options to try to find happiness. Do you see how many people get? And so what turned it out, that's why when you save or help someone find Christ, it's simple. Because you're reaching somebody. If I was to ask every one of you in this room, do you want to do good? Yeah. Even the people out on the street that are rioting, even the people that, if they're wanting to do, they're trying to solve problems. But they've been bumped and twisted and re-engineered in their brain to such a degree that this is how I think we'll get there. And even though you look at them and say, this ain't going to work. Sure it will. No, it won't. Even if you got it, you wouldn't be happy. Even if you defund the police, you're going to need them. Even if we give you a stimulus check, it's not going to change what's hurting on the inside. So God keeps saying, stop right here. But every time we keep pushing. And the Bible says we will reach the point by the end to where we do not even want to retain God in our conversation or our thought. Listen to me, we haven't reached the end yet. The next step is what I'm telling you right now. People will shout me down eventually and say, shut up. We're tired of hearing. We're sick of hearing about God. We've gone too far. We'll fix it ourselves. We're smart. They have a form of godliness, but they deny the power. And from such people, turn away. It's getting hard. For long, you ain't hardly got nobody to turn toward. Verse 6. For of this sort are those who creep into households and make captives, or gullible women, loaded down with sins, led away by various lusts. In other words, they come into people's lives and they find that they're hurting, and they promise them, hey, if we do this, and what they do eventually is they load them down with sins. And they load them with guilt. And they just become part of the problem. And this is the saddest, I think, because we have a Bible. We have this moral standard. And of all the things in our world now that we have no standard. We have no line to say, now this is truth, right? This is the truth. We don't have that. So notice what eventually happens to them in verse 7. Always learning. Think of all the people that turn on their phone every day. Think of the people that think of the knowledge that you have in your head. My grandfather had a 4th grade education. He could add and subtract, and he was ready to go to work. Most of my uncles had 6th to 10th grade educations. You're a walking library. The words that you can use, spell, places and locations that you know. Just the ability of what you... Think of how much you know. And yet you don't know enough. Because as soon as church is over, you're going to turn that thing on. And you're going to see what somebody else has said or whatever's happened or whatever. Ever learning. Always learning. But never able to come to the knowledge of truth. That's our world. That's the world that we are called to reach. That's the world that we're called to go into tomorrow and preach to while there's still time. Now, let me make it very clear. There will be pushback now, some. There will be scoffing. Because you're reaching a generation that looks like this, and you're reaching a people that think like this, and you're reaching a group that's very hard. In fact, there's some of you in this room that right now listening to me, it's hard for you to get it around in your mind that I need God. I mean, not that I believe in God. I need Him. I need Him, and I need to put everything I have. It's hard to grasp it because I've got so many other things and I got so much stuff to worry about. No, you don't. You've only got 2 things you have to do. Live and die. That's it. Whatever you accomplish in between, that's God's business. Because I could be driving home tonight and all the plans I have and all the ideas I have and all the future I have, it could be gone in 1 second. I don't own any of it. I don't have any of it. I'm thankful for whatever God gives me. But there's only 2 things I know for sure I got to do. And one of them I've already done. I was born, so I'm living. The other one, I'm trying not to speed it up. God may have a certain marker there and says, ooh, that's the day. If He does, I'm good. I'm good. And you're reaching a world that's trying desperately to find happiness, to find peace. And Paul told Timothy, who was preaching to a city of Ephesus that was called the seat where Satan sat, one of the tortures that they would do in Ephesus was that they would put somebody inside a metal animal and they would barbecue them while turning it and hear them scream. So Timothy knew what he was talking about when Paul was taught Timothy, it's going to get worse. Timothy, understand. And Timothy one day eventually would be a martyr. Historians record that Timothy was killed. Understanding that the people I'm preaching to probably won't listen. And for our generation, we're probably going to go back into our families and do our work and we're going to reach people and tell them about Jesus. And don't get upset when they laugh or believe me, they've been eating cereal a long time. They've been watching Nickelodeon and MTV. And it's real hard for them to get their mind around what they're living in. It's real hard to think, what's happening? But there's never been a better time to be telling the good news.
and telling people what all's going on and what's really happening in this world. Hey, Jesus is coming. Jesus is coming. And He's coming with power. It's just wrapping up. Everything has to be in place so when He gets here, He can show up like the hero that He is and save us. Will you stand? Father, tonight, I know we don't like the answer that I had to give, but it is the answer. If I could say it like the Apostle Paul, I would say, church, listen to me. We are living in perilous times. And this is the description of the people that we will be ministering to and the people that we will be working with and the people we're trying to drag out of a hell that they're bound for. And we're trying to get them to open their eyes and realize that there's a heaven to gain and a hell to lose. Father, just like Paul told Timothy, and just like Timothy preached faithfully, Lord, let us, for whatever time you have left, for whatever seasons that we have, whether it be 50 more years or 5 more years or 50 more minutes, I don't know. But Lord, let me be faithful for that time. Let me be waiting and looking in expectation of your return. While we're waiting, let us give the devil fits by filling up heaven. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Hey, go tell somebody about Jesus tomorrow.